Welcome to the Newsmakers Podcast. I'm Billy Hollowell, and this is a show where we go behind the headlines every day to bring you an interview with a pastor, entertainer, politician, or other notable news figure. And this is a show, again, it's daily, but it's based on our weekly TV show, which is also called Newsmakers. You can watch it on the CBN News channel and also on our YouTube page. And on this show, every day, we dive deep. It's a little more longer form with one of the people who you will often see on our Newsmakers show or across the CBN News platforms. On today's Newsmakers, author and speaker Jennie Allen has witnessed some of the most powerful revival moments over the past year. She has helped hundreds of young people get spontaneously baptized and so much more. She joins us to talk about that as well as her new book, Untangle Your Emotions, Naming What You Feel and Knowing What to Do About It. With no further ado, here is Jennie Allen. Well, Jennie, I'm excited to have you here. Your new book, Untangle Your Emotions, Naming What You Feel and Knowing What to Do About It. It's a great topic considering where we are right now culturally. Let's start with what you think, and I know this is a loaded question, but what you think Christians sometimes get wrong when it comes to emotions.
Wow. Well, hello. It's so great to meet you, Billy. Let's go. First of all, we all get emotions wrong, right? There's so much confusion around this subject. It's not just the church, it's certainly the world. You look at the world and you see everyone obsessed with happiness to the point that they will drive their entire lives off a cliff to find it. And the Bible gets that. Actually, Paul in Corinthians even says, if Christ is not raised from the dead, basically, if this is all made up, eat and drink because tomorrow you die. Like, go pursue your happiness. So if there is no God, we don't need to be too hard on the world because that's what they believe. And they are acting accordingly. And so certainly the world has not gotten this right. And we know that, following and chasing happiness and making that your God is always going to lead to destruction, right? It just does. Even people, you see that the most in like Hollywood, places where they literally have what everyone wants and it's still not enough. So then let's go over to the church. So I think the church in large part in our generation, has reacted to culture and has just said, you know what, emotions are dangerous. If your emotions are in charge, then you're going to lead a really reckless life. And certainly that is true if they're in charge. But out of a pendulum swing reaction to the world, I believe the church has really not known what to teach about emotions. And so nobody really has a good working theology of emotions because we've demonized them. They don't feel necessary. They don't feel important. In fact, they feel dangerous. And so, the problem with that mentality is God is emotional. So we know in general that emotions are not sinful in themselves. And so we know that God is emotional. We know that he created us in his image and he made us to be emotional people. And we are emotional. Even if you would consider yourself a non-emotional person, which I'm so curious, Billy, where you fall on the spectrum of what you consider yourself, you are emotional. You are someone who expresses it in a big way or expresses it not at all or suppresses it. But you were built to be emotional. So you got to first get in touch with the fact that that is just good theology. So then you when you realize, okay, I'm an emotional person, then we have to go, well, what does God say about it? And what does he model in it? And how do we live lives that are emotionally healthy and mature and holy? And there is a way to do that. And it is not to suppress it. And it is not to make our emotions our God.
No, that is so good. That middle ground approach. I mean, even having a relationship with God, when Jesus says, love God, love others, you talk about the most important commandment. Doing that requires
Right.
emotion. A relationship with God
Yes.
requires emotion, right?
Right.
Gratitude, there's so much,
Yeah.
even with one another, compassion for other people's struggles, right? I don't know if you want to
Exactly.
react to that at all.
Well, yeah, because, we all want the love and the joy, right? We're all like, okay, no, we're comfortable with that. In fact, we should be joyful, right? Although sometimes we even feel guilty about being happy. I will say that just as an aside, a lot of people will relate to that sometimes when I'm happy, I feel guilty because people are suffering, because the world is broken. So we really feel guilty about everything is the bottom line. We've got a part of our minds and a part of our in our psyche that's telling us all the time things. And one of the parts is very hard on our emotions, very critical. Almost every human, when they start crying with someone else, they tear up, even just a little bit. What is the universal thing they say after they cry or as soon as they start crying?
I'm
I'm
sorry.
sorry. It's universal. We all do it. So there is something in us that's saying this is not a good thing. This is a bad thing. I am burdening you. But the funny thing is, if you're on the other side of the table and someone just cried with you, 99% of the time, you feel really honored. You might feel awkward. I'm not saying that. We're all awkward around emotions. That's just kind of the way it is. But I would say that someone crying to me, whether it's my child, whether it's a friend, whether it's my husband, very rarely, but sometimes, that is that is meaningful to me. I feel let into a part of them that feels really sacred, and I feel really grateful. So, I think we all instinctively know that when someone else lets us in, there's something special about that, but we're all afraid to do it. So,
Yeah.
I think we all want the love and the happy and the joy, but the reality is, I think I've come to believe that the best parts are in the difficult. And this is a big journey for me. I mean, the book was created because I wasn't good at this. And so I'm learning, I'm growing.
Yeah. How hard is it? It's funny because when you have a platform like you have, and then you admit that you're not good at something or you're struggling with it, and I think that's how you make the best books and the best
Oh,
content
that's
personally.
good.
But how hard is it to kind of expose those things and talk about them so openly when you have such a big
Yeah.
platform?
Yeah, I mean, I would say multiple people that have read the book have been shocked at how raw it is. And I share about my husband's depression. I'm really candid about my weakness. I feel like, I mean, there's certainly a purpose to it. I will say that. I am not the most open and vulnerable person. In fact, my friends have really had to help me grow in this interpersonally. Now, if there's a purpose for it, I'll do it. And so, specifically sharing all of this in a book, I have seen the good. I have seen the purpose. I have I have cringed at chapters that are still out there. Like in Get Out of Your Head, I wrote a book a few years ago, and there's a whole chapter in there that after I wrote it and edited it, I've never looked at it again because it is painful. I mean, I don't want to act like this doesn't cost me something to put all this into the world. But I've always been a believer that I'm a better companion than I am uh, on a pedestal. Like I'll do better in the trench beside you, and we can navigate together how to get out of this pit than I am at the top of the pit saying, "Hey, this is what you do." So I've taken that posture in my whole ministry, and that has been it's not just unselfish for everybody else. It's actually been a more comfortable place for me to live. I'm very at home in the trenches with people. And so I like that spot better than a pedestal. So in that regard, I am comfortable as you can be with it. But when it comes to sharing with other people, I didn't see a point. So I see a point in doing it in a book. I saw a point in doing it in a talk or a message. It was harder for me to do it to my friends. And the reason it felt hard for me to do it to my friends and is because it felt like, what's the point? What's the point in going back and reliving a really difficult day? What's the point? What's the point in going back and reliving a moment from my childhood that is still with me, that seems to be coming out sideways all the time? How is that going to help? I was not a believer in mourning with those or having people mourn with me, right? I wasn't a believer in like that grieving together actually heals something. I didn't understand the science of it. I didn't understand what the Bible meant when it said things like, blessed are those who are poor in spirit. Blessed are those who mourn. I didn't understand what it meant when you say mourn with those who mourn, because isn't it more effective to fix someone? Isn't that a
Hmm.
better way? Like,
Yeah.
if you can fix me, fix me. I don't want to cry about it. Fix me. And so I was a fixer, and I believe I was missing out on everything. I mean, let me just start. I was missing out on a deeper connection with the people I love because they didn't feel heard and seen by me. I was missing out on a deeper connection with God because I was coming to him asking him to fix something rather than being with him in the pain and the suffering and the places, the most intimate places. Why verses like blessed are those who mourn exist? Because in the most intimate valleys and deep places are the deepest connections with God. I was missing out on being whole in my own soul and spirit because instead of crying when I needed to cry, or being angry when I needed to be angry, or being scared when it's really scary. I was pushing down all those feelings. And so what you do when you're pushing down those feelings is you're wasting a lot of energy. You have your hand on a box and you're trying to hold it back, and you're out here still trying to perform and do all the things that's needed from you. But yet one hand is you're holding it back with one hand. And so once I got into understanding my emotions and actually the permission to feel, everything began to shift.
That's really powerful. And I look at your ministry and what you do and even the headlines you've made over the last 6 months, and we'll talk about some of that a little bit in terms of the baptisms, the spontaneous baptisms at Auburn. You have this passion for Gen Z, and it really is a generation that emotions, it's been a very complicated thing for this
Sure.
generation in light of what culture has fed the generation and what they've grown up with. Let's talk a little bit about that because I find it fascinating. You're here helping people navigate and unpack emotion in an appropriate way. And you've gone through this yourself. And yet this generation needs that so badly. Why are you so passionate about reaching Gen Z?
Well, it's funny. So much has been happening personally in my life with revival. So I've been on several college campuses, have had several stories of revival. I got to be an observer at Asbury for a little while and tell some stories out of there. So I've been around this revival world that's happening. It is just happening. And it's really fun to observe and to be a part of. So I would say I think people were like, gosh, you're writing a book about emotions, write a book about revival. Like we're all sitting on the edge of our seat. And I'm going, okay, that's fun to think about and talk about. But at the end of the day, like this generation, it makes me cry. They're really stuck. They're really stuck and they need help. And I'm a mama. And when I see it, yes, I want them to have Jesus, and I will preach the gospel every time I get in front of them. I will call for repentance every time I get in front of them. I will do the work of an evangelist and a revivalist. I will do that job because that is the core of who I am, and I want to see it happen. But they also need to know how to navigate a very, very complicated world. And it's only going to get more complicated. And they need to know how to navigate that in a way that is biblical, but also really helpful. And and I think just throwing verses at them and being like, I just wish they would be more holy. I wish they would get off technology. I wish they would work harder. It's just not helping. They are broken. They have lived through already in their lifetime more than most of us have. And so we've got to tend their souls. And Jesus did this, right? Like I'm very very confident about the work I'm doing in every front. My books will be sold in Target, a lot of them, and unbelievers will pick them up, and boys will pick them up, and girls will pick them up, and all different types of people will pick them up. And I believe that's the work of Jesus. He also brought bread to people. He also helped their eyesight. He also helped their physical ailment. He also helped them when they felt purposeless and hopeless. He gave them a mission. So I'm such a believer in holistic discipleship that we don't just stop at giving them Jesus. We give them Jesus and then we show them how to walk with him. And so
Yeah.
this is part of that story for me.
Yeah, and I think it's so easy to dunk on millennials and Gen Z and all these generations and to say they're so horrible, they're so bad. I mean, that's what everybody does, but the reality is the heart and compassion for these young people who have been really lied to in so many different ways and sold really the biggest lie, which is that they can find truth within themselves. And what's interesting though, and correct me on any of this if you disagree, but I think it's interesting watching these young people then at the same time watch those lies unfold and they realize this isn't true. We can't find hope and truth in ourselves. And I think that's one of the reasons why we're seeing these revival moments, why we're seeing young people say, wait, what else is out there? I mean, it seems like such an opportunity right now to have compassion and to reach them where they are.
Yeah. They're hungry. It's not hard. I showed up in 2018 at A&M and M and I felt the difference. They showed up on the scene that year and in college campuses where I was speaking. And I came home and told my team, I said, something just changed in the room. I don't know. I didn't know the generation had literally changed that year, but they were they were desperate. There was a desperation. And I think, we can look at that two ways. You can look at the generation and say, golly, they're addicted to vaping, they're addicted to drugs, they're addicted to alcohol, they're addicted to porn, they're addicted to technology, they're addicted to laziness, whatever. You can say all that. They just are they're trying to find their way. And it has kind of been a mess for them. I mean, it's not been easy. And
Yeah.
so I think we need to stop. Like, I don't know how that's helpful. And start asking why. Why are they coping? Why are they running to these things? And they are running to these things because they don't have hope. And we do it
Yeah.
too, right? We run to these things when we don't have hope. And so let's give them hope. And
Yeah.
it's pretty much as simple as that to me.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, obviously it was really interesting as an observer of you observing and being at Auburn and seeing those hundreds of spontaneous baptisms. I think you were baptizing and helping baptize, these young people for over 2 hours. I mean, can you talk about that particular experience and any of the other ones around it? But that really stuck out to a lot of people.
Yeah, it was pretty incredible night and we didn't plan it. I just finished and done gospel. I shared the gospel and got off. And just really candidly, there wasn't like a massive response to the gospel in that moment, but I did sense the spirit was moving. And I get off the stage and someone walked up to me and said, "Hey, it was a pastor." And he said, "Listen, it's so great. This girl just texted me and said, I want to be baptized tonight." And I just said, "Hey, where are you going to do that?" And he said, "A pool." And I said, "Could we think bigger? Could we, could we find something bigger?" And he said, "There's a lake down the street, but it's like a half a mile away, a mile away." I said, "Do you think they would come?" And he said, "Well, we can try." So I literally just got back up on stage. The worship was going. We were wrapping up the night. And I just said, "Would anybody want to be baptized tonight?" And dozens of hands went up. And so we said, "Well, we're going to go down to the lake." And I mean, everybody came. They picked up people on their way. There were 6,000 people on there. And I mean, it was just wrapping the entire lake. And it's a pretty big lake, 3, 4 rows deep. It was wild. And they stayed. We were there till almost midnight before we just said, "Hey, we're going to call it." But I mean, it was amazing. And hearing the kids, like every single kid said something different. But one of the things they said consistently was, we would ask them, why are you here? Why do you want to do this? And just make sure they understood the gospel before we did this. And so many of them said this. They said, I want to be clean. I want to be clean. And so, I just think that's their longing. And, we're just going to have to, this is old news. Every generation has judged the younger generations, but let's not.
Yeah, no, I mean, but
Let's help them.
you're seeing the fruits of not
Yeah,
only stepping out to help them, but I think the desperation that is there. And let's be honest, we can sit there and criticize them all day. I'm an elderly millennial. I'm on the upper end of the millennial scale. My generation, the next generation, it's a lot of it is our fault in some ways, and
for
how the
sure.
culture that we've sort of incubated. So yeah, we can go and criticize all the young people, but we're the
Yeah,
ones raising them in this culture, right?
that's
So
right. Yeah.
there's some responsibility there. But I find it incredible that you're talking about all these different things, emotions, these things that need to be talked about at a time, again, where the biggest critique is, don't follow your emotions, don't listen to your emotions,
Mm,
they'll get you in trouble. And I saw you even
yeah.
posted something like this on Instagram recently about something about the devil. The devil will use the emotions to sort of trick you, don't listen to them. And you sort of corrected that. And so with that, and you can comment
Yes.
on that, but when people pick this book up and they read it, when they're done, what is it that you want them feeling and thinking about emotions?
Well, the first thing is that they're gifts from God, that He gifted them to us, because the more we avoid them, the more we're missing out on the fullest Christian life. It's just true. You are dampening. I mean, you got to think, do you want to live a really boring documentary with no emotion, or do you want to live an epic movie? And the epic movies are full of emotion. That is what makes the difference. Yes, sometimes it's cameras and lighting and good acting, but at the end of the day, like, you're going to either live an emotionless life or an emotional life. And the people, my prayer is that whether you are someone who would call yourself very emotional or someone who would say, I really don't feel a lot of emotion, I don't even know if they're good or bad, I hope everyone would read it, because it's going to give you a healthier framework for how to feel emotion. I literally made steps, and that is a funny thing. And I didn't find it. I don't think I found it in any other book in all my research. And I think it's because all the counselors write it and they know it's not about steps, but I need steps. I just need to know, what do I do when I feel overwhelmed with emotion? So I think it'll help those that feel very out of control with their emotions, but I think it will also help those that maybe don't want to feel and they're not sure they want to feel and they're scared of emotion. But I hope the church reads it. I hope pastors read it. I hope pastors read it and think about their theology on emotion. No, the thinkers aren't thinking about feelings. My professor, I try to do all the science work, but also, of course, the Bible work. I'm a Bible teacher. I was seminary trained. And so I go to my favorite professor because I'm looking for the commentaries on it and I can't find them. And so I go to my professor. He finds 3 and he's not even sure they're good. And he was like, Jennie, what the heck? Like, I don't think the thinkers ever thought about their feelings. And yet this is the issue of our day. Give me a break. So we need a better theology of emotion. I say that to the greater C church. But then as individuals, my hope is you feel tremendous compassion because Jesus is compassionate. It says that we have a high priest in Hebrews that empathizes with our weakness, that he feels our infirmities. He knows what it means to feel sad. He knows what it means to feel angry. He knows what it means to feel confused at people and their idiot thoughts and feeling. I mean, and I'm not saying confused, like he doesn't know what's going on. It's just, really, this is how we're going to do this, just that feeling. And
Yeah.
so he's got all these feelings and you see it in the scriptures everywhere. That's what I did for the Bible study and throughout the book was, let's just look at Jesus. I mean, I could go through the whole Bible and show you all the ways God feels. He's very feely. The Holy Spirit's the most feely of all. I could really focus on that, but Jesus is a lot. And you see his interaction with humans and you see that he knew he would heal Lazarus. He knew he would raise him from the dead. He says it a few verses up in John, and you get down to the minute that he's about to do it and Mary's crying, and rather than fix the problem, he doesn't fix the problem. He could have. Everybody would have been happy right then. He could have said, don't cry, like, I got this. But he didn't. He stopped and he wept. He wept with Mary. He wept with those that were surrounding the tomb. He wept with them. Why? Why? I wouldn't do that. I would fix the problem. I was going to fix it anyway. I told everybody I would. So let me do my job and let's skip the cry fest. Like, why do this? Because there is something in our brains that trauma causes, whatever the trauma is. It can be small, it can be big. It can be something that happens in your day to day. What trauma, small or big, does is it breaks neural pathways if you are alone in that trauma. And what heals neural pathways, what repairs them, one of the only things that repairs neural pathways in your brain is to not be alone in that trauma. So when you have had something difficult happen, and at the end of the day, you say to your spouse or to your friend, this was horrible, and you let it all out and you cry and you say, this is what was so bad. You could think to yourself, what's the point? But your neural pathways begin to heal. And all of a sudden, especially in a safe environment where the person listens and goes, man, that stinks. I am so sorry. I am with you. Of course you feel sad. Of course you feel sad. It's what we all want, but it's not what we give.
No, and I love that you're addressing it because God gave us emotions for a reason, and I think it's easy to just dismiss them, but they're clearly part of who he is, as you were saying, and part of how he designed us to be. The book is Untangle Your Emotions, naming what you feel and knowing what to do about it. Jennie, appreciate your time today.
You bet. Thank you so much for having me, Billy.
That's all for today's Newsmakers podcast. Be sure to tune in for the next episode of the show, and also head over to the CBN News YouTube channel and the CBN News channel to watch Newsmakers every week. We'll see you soon.